So good evening, everybody. Here we are again from the EIZOC Secretariat. We are here for the program Ophthalmic Research and Publication Initiative ORPI webinar series number 13. We had our topic today is the choosing the right journal for the publication, and we had with us the speaker, none other than Dr. Sabyasachi Sengupta, a young dynamic personality with a moderator, even more younger, Dr. Pranita Shahai with us. All details will be coming, will be given by Dr. BNR Subudhi sir. May I now request our President, Dr. Pranav Ranjan sir, to give the welcome address, and then we'll just continue with the program. Over to Dr. Pranav Ranjan sir.
Thank you, Dr. Swaraj Bhattacharya, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the EIZOC platform. This is the 13th episode of Ophthalmic Research and Publication Initiative, and we are extremely grateful to our dynamic mentor, Dr. Chatra Jayadev. She is not only a doctor, but she is a lawyer also, and a lot of interest in research. And for today's webinar, we have our speaker, Dr. Sabyasachi Sengupta, who is the founder of Sengupta Research Academy, and he's a VR surgeon from Mumbai. The moderator for the webinar is Dr. Pranita Sahai. We have a team of panelists in Dr. Shamista Behra, Dr. Prafulla Kumar Maharana, Dr. Rupak Roy, and Dr. Arvind Ray. All of them experts in their own field. And there will be an active participation from the various medical colleges of the East and beyond. We welcome all the audience to the webinar, and this webinar has been possible due to the untiring effort of Dr. BNR Subudhi, who is the chief coordinator, Dr. Santosh Mahapatra, the coordinator of the webinar, Secretary EIZOC, Dr. Swaraj Bhattacharya, and Chairman Scientific Committee, Dr. Sabyasachi Patnaik. With these words, I would also like to remind you that we have an upcoming annual conference of EIZOC on the 29th, 30th November and 1st December at Kalimpong, West Bengal. All of you are invited. We'll have a link shortly which will become active from next month onwards. You all are invited to attend the annual conference. With these words, it's over to you, Dr. BNR Subudhi, the Chief Coordinator. Please, sir.
Thank you, sir. Hello. Am I visible?
Yes, sir.
Respected President.
Slideshows are full slides. Sir.
Yeah. Let's go. It's going? Is it moving?
It's not moving, sir. You are still on the...
Now?
No, sir. No, sir.
Slideshow nahi. Now it is.
Now it's there.
So, respected President EIZOC, our Secretary Dr. Swaraj Bhattacharya, and Chairman Scientific Committee Dr. Sabyasachi Patnaik, and all the guests, I welcome you all for the EIZOC ORPI 13 number. As you know, it's really a series of research topics we are selected since a long time. And last episode was how to initiate the publication by Dr. Bharat Gurnani. And today we have got another dynamic young speaker, Dr. Sabyasachi Sengupta, speaking about the choosing the right journal for the publication. And as you know, this program was very much well supported by our EIZOC team, President, Secretary, and Chairman Scientific Committee. And we are really indebted to them. And mentor. Without mentor, the program is never successful. And our mentor is always... Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, sir.
Dr. Chitra Jayadev is always with us, mentoring our programs and selecting good speakers and good topics too. Thank you, Dr. Chitra, for being with us.
ये तो आपसे छोटा से इतना बड़ा दिखा है ना
My co-coordinator, Dr. Santosh Mahapatra, is always with me, coordinating these programs. And today's speaker is none other than a young, dynamic Dr.
Somebody is talking, sir. You should ask them to mute, please.
Dr. Swaraj, I think somebody is speaking from your side. Today's speaker is Dr. Sabyasachi Sengupta, and I will request our moderator today, Dr. Pranita Sahai, to speak about him, and she will introduce Dr. Sabyasachi Sengupta. As you know, Pranita is young, dynamic ophthalmologist from Guru Nanak Eye Center, Maulana Medical College, New Delhi. She is really very much interested in the research and publications, and I really today I invite her to be the moderator this session. And our panelists today, Dr. Sarmishta Behra, Professor, Binsar Medical College, Burla, and Dr. Praful Kumar Mahana, as you know, Assistant Professor, RP Center, AIMS, New Delhi, and also Secretary DOS, Dr. Rupak Roy, Consultant at Aditya Birla Shankar Netralaya, Mukundapur, Kolkata, and Dr. Arvind Rai, the Cornea Surgeon, the LV Prasad Institute. They're all really research scholars, I would say, and there are a lot of interest in the writing and publishing the journals. And today's postgraduate students who will participate in this today's topic, Dr. Bharat Mittal from Lucknow, Dr. Piyush Jain from MK's Medical College, Berhampur, Dr. Sandipana Sanapati, RIO Cuttack, and Dr. Sonali Soy from GMC's Sundargarh, and Dr. Survi Prasad from Silchar Medical College and Hospital, and Dr. Devjit Dekka from again Silchar Medical College and Hospital, Dr. Pankaj Shukla from JLN Medical College, Bhagalpur, Dr. Manasa from MKC Medical College, and Dr. Satrupa Das from RIU Kolkata. So these are the postgraduate students. Really, they were very much interested to participate in this topic. So this webinar, and I definitely will see that these people they write at the end of maybe after 2-3 months they will write a paper and publish the right journal. So these viewers, I welcome you all to this today's webinar, episode 13, and all the viewers also to this program. So now it's over to Dr. Pranita to moderate, introduce the speaker and start the session. And I think Dr. Before Pranita speaks, I think I will ask Dr. Chaitra to say a few words.
Right.
Thank you, sir. And it's again a pleasure to be back here. And I think for the last couple of years, we've done some excellent webinars, and thanks to mentors like Sunny, who've come forward and given their time to spread the whole concept of publishing. And we have, enthusiastic mentors and moderators like Pranita herself. And I'm sure she'll be like a role model for all the youngsters to follow in her footsteps. And we've been planning it in a very systematic manner, like, which journal to choose, how to search on PubMed. We've been quite organized in that way, and we've already done a whole lot of them. In fact, going forward, I think we're going to make it into a module so that every new set of postgraduates come, we'll have a complete module for them to finish. And if possible, also. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, and if possible, we can also make it like a certified course. So that becomes nice for them to say that you've attended a module. But unless we make it formal like that, we may not be able to go. And I'm sure Sunny can help us a little bit with that as well. So over to you, Sunny, and Pranita. I'm sure you guys are going to make this very simple for all of us.
Thank you, ma'am. So thank you, sir, first for inviting me as the moderator for this session. And without much delay, I will be introducing our dynamic speaker for this session today, that is Dr. Sabyasachi Sengupta. Sir is a vitreoretina surgeon who's practicing in Mumbai at the Future Vision Eye Care. He has been the associate editor for the prestigious Indian Journal of Ophthalmology for a whole lot of 6 years. That's been a long time. He's done his diploma in ophthalmology for JIPMA, following which he has done his DNB from Arvind, Pondicherry. He has done a fellowship in vitreoretina from Shankar Netralaya and also from the Wilma Eye Institute, John Hopkins in United States of America. He has received the prestigious McCartney Prize by the Royal College of Ophthalmologists in London, and he is the first ever non-British national to receive this award. He is also the recipient for the Dr. G. Venkateswamy Gold Medal in DNB Ophthalmology in 2009. He has published over 120 papers in index peer-reviewed journals, which is a great deal, and I'm sure everybody understands that. And he is also renowned, is known as the top 2% of the global researchers list by the Stanford University. He's the founder for Sengupta Research Academy, which is one of the kind of portal which is offering e-learning modules on research methodology and services for manuscript preparation. He's a prolific speaker across India on research methodology and retinal diseases. So let us all welcome Dr. Sabyasachi Sengupta, and we are eagerly waiting to hear from you, sir.
Thank you so much, Pranita. And if you can stop your screen share, I'll just quickly. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to EIZOC and to Chaitra and everyone else for giving me this opportunity. And it's great that you are looking at doing these kind of sessions. So today we're going to discuss a little bit about choosing a journal. I'm really happy to see a lot of interest, in these kind of topics. These are really, niche topics, or let's say things that we don't pay attention to a lot before we actually get stuck, right? So getting unstuck is relatively difficult, when we are thinking about these things. So remember that a lot of effort and energy can be spent just for looking and searching for a right journal, right? So I think this is very important to have a target journal in mind even before you start writing. And as you go along in your research and publication journey, you will realize that that is very important. That's because every journal has a different approach in the way they invite articles, in the way their word counts, and almost everything else is different. So choosing a journal is very important even before you start writing, and that's sort of a it's like a pro tip, but it's important for you to remember right before we start. So overall, when you think about research and publications, you should think in terms of these 4 questions, and you should get answers to these 4 questions. First is, why should I publish? Then where and how should I publish? What are the common causes of rejection, so that you don't make these mistakes again? And what do I do with the rejected paper? So if you get answers to these 4 questions, and they are relatively simplified, but if you get answers to these 4 questions, you'll realize that almost all of the rest is relatively easy, right? So we are going to look at this question, right? Where and how should I publish? And today we are really going to talk about where should I publish, right? So that is overall, a large overview of how you can think about research and try and get answers to these questions. Yeah. So, how do I choose a journal? There's a lot of confusion, especially when you are relatively new in your research and publication journey. A lot of it is unclear. There's a lot of disorientation in terms of, should I submit here and should I submit there? And the biggest problem is that if you don't submit to the right journal, you're going to get rejected, right? And then that causes some amount of that euphoria to diminish, and then you are not going to take the next step at all, and you will say, oh, ye meri bas ki baat nahi hai, mujhse nahi hoga, and that's because, and it could be a simple job of actually choosing the wrong journal, doing the right study or doing the right thesis and everything else. But then at the last hurdle, which is choosing the right journal, you've made several blunders, and therefore you haven't got published, right? So, and that is more often the case, because I work with a lot of people in India and internationally, and I see that they have actually submitted perhaps to the wrong journal, and we'll see some examples of that as well. So it's a critical decision. It decides the fate of an article and the rapidity of publication as well, right? So, we need to think a little bit deeply about this. So these are some of the questions that you need to then ask before you choose a journal. First is this an indexed journal or not? And what indexes are available? And is this journal indexed or not? Is the journal peer reviewed? Then what is its impact factor? And so what is meant by an impact factor? Who is your target audience? And does the journal accept manuscripts from all specialties, or is it subspecialty based, or is it very niche, like a specific glaucoma or a retina journal? Then ask your peers and colleagues, especially as helpful seniors, what would be their number 1 journal of choice for an article like this. Then also look at the journal's website and look at its scope of what it is wanting to publish. What are its acceptance rates? Right, so if there are 100 papers submitted, say 20 are getting published, vis-a-vis another journal where only 5 are getting published. So acceptance rates which are low are difficult to get through, right? So perhaps don't think of those journals. And then does the journal have a rapid review process and quick publication, right? So these are some of the things that we need to consider when we are looking at choosing a journal. Let's look at some of these, one by one. So what are the online databases or indexes which are available? So an index really means, so when you think about a textbook, you open the first page, and then you first thing you see is an index. You see, this chapter, there are 12 chapters, there are so many pages, and what each chapter talks about. Same way, index, all these journals, which are all biomedical journals, they are all indexed by some of these agencies. So the most important index that we all look at and say that the journal is indexed or not is PubMed. The other parts of PubMed are PubMed Central, and the actual index is called Medline. Right. So, is it PubMed index? Is the first question that you need to answer. And how will you find it out? Is by actually going to the journal's website and looking up whether it is PubMed indexed or not. Or you can actually look at some of the previous publications which have been done, and then you can copy and paste some of those titles into the PubMed box, and then actually see whether they are turning up or not. And also PubMed has, on itself, PubMed has, the name of journals which are a part of that index, PubMed or any of these. So you can even go there and even search whether this journal is actually indexed. And, sometimes you'll see that the journal is not indexed, but it's in the process of indexing, or it has been rejected once, or it has been rejected twice, or things like that, right? So whether it's PubMed indexed or not is the first and foremost that you need to understand. Remember that getting PubMed indexed is not easy at all. There are a lot of prerequisites for a journal to get published, to get PubMed indexed. So they have to publish a high quality and a minimum number of papers which are all high quality. They are all getting cited to a certain extent, and that journal is causing a stir in the scientific community, right? So if a journal is PubMed indexed, then almost all the other questions that I put forward are also taken care of. So if you look at a journal and it's PubMed indexed, that's a good journal to submit, right? But then if it is not PubMed index, then a lot of these other, we need to look at a lot of the other things. The other important index is Science Citation Index Expanded, that is run by Thomson Reuters. There are many other indexes like Embase, Cochrane, Scopus, and Web of Science, and we'll take a look at a little bit of Web of Science later on. But so Science Citation Index Expanded is the one which actually gives the impact factor, right? So so the PubMed indexing is one, and impact factor is a different thing. So they are done by two different agencies. But overall, the first question that you need to answer is this indexed, and whether it's PubMed indexed. Right. So this is a little older screenshot of the PubMed website, but this is pretty much how it looks like. And this is the Science Citation Index Expanded, right? You can actually search, and you can view the journal list of all ophthalmology journals. So there are about 63 or 64, I think, journals now. So many of the journals will actually highlight it. So this I have put it up a little older photo of the IJO website, which actually said that it is now included in Science Citation Index Expanded. Currently, it does not show, right? But so if you see the IJO website, which is a little older version of the website, it clearly shows that it's PubMed indexed, and it is also Science Citation Index Expanded included, right? So there is an impact factor. So the first question is whether it's indexed. Second is the journal peer reviewed? So what is peer review? It's very important to understand this concept of peer review, right? So the journal, when you submit it to a journal, your paper goes through a whole cycle of things where you submit, and then there is an editorial review. If the editor feels it's okay, then it goes through peer review, and then revisions, and then there is a final decision. So this is pretty much how it looks like, right? So so you submit the paper as an author. The first thing is it's going to go into editorial pre-review, right? So the editor is pretty much the center of all of this, right? So editorial pre-review, so editor or an associate editor takes a look at your paper, and if they feel that, oh, this does not satisfy the scope of the journal, or that it does not, it's not what the journal is looking for, and the readership may not be interested, and that the quality is perhaps not as much as they expected, your paper might be straight away rejected there. If they find the journal, if they find the paper to be okay, they will decide and notify the authors, if it's rejected, of course, and if it's okay, they will assign it to reviewers. Now, reviewers are people who are experts in that particular domain. Say you are writing a paper on pseudo exfoliation, and then there are people who have done a lot of work on pseudo exfoliation in the past, and therefore these papers will be sent to those group of reviewers who are already experts, established experts in that past. In the past on that particular subdomain, right? So we are now talking about niche expertise. So the reviewer will look at the paper, they will review it, and then they will suggest changes or modifications, and then they will come up with a decision, and they that will be decided and notified to the authors in terms of either straight away accepted, or a revision, or a rejection, right? So these are the three possibilities which will happen once all the reviewers. So usually there are at least 2 or 3 reviewers which take a look at your paper, and then if they find that the paper exceptional, then they will straight away accept it. But that's not very common. Commonest is either rejection or revision. If it's rejection, then it's again you are notified that your paper has been rejected. If it's a revision, then it is the paper is sent back to you to revise and resubmit. So there you have to actually take a look at all the reviewer questions and comments and critique, and then actually come up with a satisfactory answer to convince the reviewer that what you have done, and whatever the questions have been raised have been answered properly. The editor again checks these revisions, right? So if you see, the editor is very much at the heart of all this. The editor checks revision. Editor meaning it's not just the single editor in chief, but it's a whole group of associate editors and section editors and all of these, right? So they basically check for these revisions, and then they might actually send it back to the reviewer once again to take a look at what you have written, or sometimes they may say, oh, everything looks fine, and they may actually accept it. And then it is that they send that proof, that the manuscript which is in its raw form, it is sent to the publisher, who makes a proof of this. Proof is basically how it's going to look like in print, right? So that's a PDF version. That proof is sent to you for checking proofs, and then you send it back, and then the paper is actually published, right? So the editor is really in the center of all of these, right? So is this a peer-reviewed journal? Is the second question that we are actually looking at, isn't it? If you remember. So does the journal actually have any peer review process or not, is what you need to look at on the journal website, right? Also, International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, or ICMJE, is another website which also gives information about how to do these reviews and how to actually write comments and all of these. You can take a look at that as well. So the second question was, is the journal peer reviewed? The third is, what is meant by impact factor of a journal, and what is its impact? The journal that you're targeting, does it have a good impact or not? Right. So what is the impact factor of a journal? So remember, this is given by Science Citation Index Expanded, that is run by Thomson Reuters. So it has a formula, right? So remember that what we are really, the formula may confuse you, but what we are really looking for is how impactful are the papers which are being published in that journal? Are they actually moving the needle of science going forwards? Are people reading those papers a lot? Are people citing those papers a lot? And are future research papers based on what is being published in that particular journal, isn't it? So if the question to all of this is yes, then that journal has an important or a good impact, isn't it? It's like influencers in social media nowadays, right? So whatever those influencers do, the whole tempo or bandwagon follows behind that. So similarly, is this journal having a high impact in terms of the science that it's publishing? So there is a formula to this. Suppose A is the number of times an article is published in 2006 and 7 were cited by the index journals during 2008. So, it's a 2-year impact factor. So whatever is published in 2 years, 2006 and 7 say, and then now they are being cited. Cited means it's part of the bibliography or references of other papers in other indexed journals, not just any journal, but PubMed indexed journals during 2008. And B is the total number of citable items published by that journal, right? So not every paper will get cited, right? So, what are the total number of citable items? That means what are the total number of papers being published? There are certain items in a journal which are not citable, which are looked at as non-citable, right? So, for example, an editorial by an editor, there's a very poor chance of it getting cited, right? So that's a non-citable item. So what are the total number of citable items? It's almost like what are the total number of original articles, case reports, and all of these. And out of that, how many have actually gotten cited? For the 2 years that is being published, how many have gotten cited in the third year? So 2008 impact factor is A upon B, right? Where A, say you have 2000 citations and you had 1000 citable items. So that impact factor is 2. That really means that each paper which is being published is getting cited 2 times, or 2.5 times, or 3 times, or 5 times, or whatever that impact factor is, right? So average number of times the article is published over 2 years and it is to be cited. I'll show you an example of ophthalmology journals. This is relatively recent. If you see ophthalmology, which is their main in the journal from the American Academy of Ophthalmology, the impact factor, this is a 2020. I've just taken it a little older one. So the impact factor is 12. Current impact factor is 14, right? So every article which is published in ophthalmology journal is cited about 14 times, right, in the third year. So 2021 and 2022, whatever all these papers have been cited at least 12 to 14 times in 2023. right? So that is really how it is. So JAMA Ophthalmology has 7, investigative ophthalmology and visual sciences has 4.5, retina has 4.25, and others. Survey of ophthalmology has 6.04, and the highest impact in ophthalmology is progress in retinal and eye research. So these are all journals which are review articles. Even Survey of Ophthalmology, if you have read it before, these are all review articles. Again, this annual review of vision sciences is again a review article, right? So as you can imagine, that review articles have a higher chance of getting cited, right? Because they have a lot of information in that. And others like original articles don't have that high a chance of getting cited, right? So journals which are review article based are obviously going to have a slightly high impact factor. So like I said, some drawbacks of this impact factor metric is that review journals and journals with original articles are considered as the same, which is perhaps not fair. It includes limited journals from Science Citation Index Expanded and not all of PubMed. And self citations are also counted, which is, I think, again, not fair, because if I'm writing a paper on a topic which is related to something that I've done in the past, I might cite 7 or 8 papers which I have published in the past on the same topic, right? So then all my papers are getting more and more citations. So if everyone is allowed to do self citations so many times, then as you can imagine, it's going to just get bloated up and not be a real value, right? So impact factor has its drawbacks, but in today's world, this is pretty much what we have in terms of comparing across journals. Right, so it's most widely accepted and authoritative. The next is, who is your target audience? I think this is really important. After looking at indexing, this is as important as all the others, right? So the target audience really means who is going to or who is most likely to read your paper, right? So it could be a national or a regional or an international kind of audience, and that really depends upon the topic that you're doing. So you need to figure out who would be interested in this paper. Suppose you're looking at a particular fungal keratitis paper, which is not common at all in a lot of the Western world, then it is possible that those kind of journals may not be interested in that paper. So it may be more of a regional or a national audience who might be wanting to read your paper. Vis-a-vis, you might be looking at a new phaco machine or a new intraocular lens from a major manufacturer, and then the whole world is awaiting some results from that study. So more international audience might be wanting to actually read those papers. Whether only ophthalmologists are interested in this, or whether even physicians might be interested in this, right? So very large studies, I'll show you some examples, but very large studies which impact a lot of not just ophthalmology, but overall health in general, and generally are path breaking papers are a lot of others, including physicians and others, are interested in those papers. So you might choose a different kind of journal. And then lastly, is it a subspecialty kind of paper, or even general ophthalmologists may be interested in this kind of paper, right? So if you are a glaucoma specialist and you've done, say, a particular modification of a trabeculectomy, maybe the general ophthalmologist may not want to really get their tongue into that, but a glaucoma surgeon will very much want to look at that paper. So a subspecialty versus general ophthalmology is something, again, you need to figure out. So this is an example of some of my older papers. So this is incidence and long-term outcomes of toxic anterior segment syndrome at Arvind Eye Hospital. So this is a entity which happens not just in India, but it happens in Philippines, in Argentina, in the US, in Europe, and in the Middle East, and everywhere else, right? So almost everyone will want to be interested in at least in knowing what is the incidence and what happens to these patients over 1 year, over 2 years. A lot of people say there is corneal decompensation, there is intractable glaucoma, and all of this, but then we didn't find. So we had a large series, about 72 eyes, and the incidence was even more than infection endophthalmitis, right? And long-term outcomes are all good. So international audience would want to read that paper. This paper has been cited quite a lot, and me and my other co-authors, especially Dr. Rengaraj Venkatesh, we have actually reviewed a lot of papers. So this is published in 2011. I have reviewed more than 50 papers on this topic over the last decade. And so I think has he, right? So both of us have reviewed about like 70, 80 papers at least. So imagine the impact that these two authors are having on how, say, literature is evolving on TAS over a period of time, right? So sometimes, all of these things would also happen and may not be under your control. But so the sort of take-home message from this is, an international audience may be interested in this paper. Now, this is another paper which talked about caterpillar hair. and ophthalmia nodosa, right? So this is far more common in in tropical countries like ours, and it's very very uncommon in very cold countries, right? So perhaps an international audience would not be interested in this, and when we submitted this to JAMA Ophthalmology, they clearly told us that this is something which might be be good for your national journal, or more like a regional journal, like a Asia Pacific Journal of Ophthalmology, right? So we looked at Indian Journal of Ophthalmology for this paper. There's another paper on pigmented keratomycosis, again a slightly old paper, but just to get home the point that this kind of fungal infection almost never happens in a lot of the world. But it is increasing now with contact lenses and others, but then this it's very uncommon in the US or other parts like Japan and other places. So a national audience may be more interested in this kind of paper. All physicians may be interested in papers which we may never write, right? So these are first papers on anti-VEGFs in treatment of age-related macular degeneration, right? So this is ranibizumab and bevacizumab for neovascular age-related macular degeneration. This is called the CAT study, right? And so other papers like the Anchor trial, the Marina trial, all of these have been published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Not that you and me might do it or not do it, but just that the entire physician community will be interested in these kind of papers. Right. So, other papers which, we might think are not good enough for NEJM, the NEJM has an impact factor of 52, right? So that's a very, very high impact factor. But this paper talks about enzymatic vitriolysis with ochreplasmin for vitreomacular traction and macular holes. Now, this drug is almost obsolete, but then in 2012, the original article made it to NEJM, right? So not always. So this slide just goes to show that everything that is published in the topmost journals are perhaps not not worth gold, right? So just keep your discretion in mind. Remember that if it's subspecialty versus general ophthalmologist who might be interested in this, so this paper talks about bevacizumab in preventing bleb failures for single-site phacotrabeculectomy. Right. So now this is a very, very niche topic, isn't it? So this is mostly going to be dealt by glaucoma surgeons who are doing phacotrabeculectomies and not by a general ophthalmologist. So this is good for Journal of Glaucoma or for other subspecialty journals, right? This is phacoemulsification versus manual small incision cataract surgery for white cataract. This paper has been cited more than 200 times, right? So this is about white cataracts or all those very complicated kind of cataracts, and very likely people who are really actively into cataract surgery will be interested in this. So the right choice for this was the Journal of Cataract and Refractive Surgery. Right. So overall tips are: look at citations in your own paper, because once you write a paper, you will have your own bibliography, right, or your own citations, and say you have 12 or 15 or 17 references, and see which journal has been repeated multiple times, right? So that perhaps is a good journal for your own paper. Let's speak to senior faculty and get an idea on journals, and commonly read on these concerned topics, right? Because they may be reading journals on a regular basis. You can ask a librarian, a good librarian, regarding which journal might be actually interested in this paper. And of course, the PubMed search to determine journals publishing similar articles frequently is always a good way to look at it, right? So target audience is something that you should think about. Now, does it accept manuscripts from all specialties? Say this is ophthalmology, this is American journal, this is British journal, this is archives are now JAMA Ophthalmology, these are all journals which take papers from all subspecialties in ophthalmology, right? So they have a much wider reader base, as we all know, probably have high impact factors and publish monthly, and they have at least 10 articles per issue, right? The problem is that, they are all difficult to get into. And these are some subspecialty journals: Retina, Journal of Glaucoma, Orbit and Cornea, and Retina Kits and Brief Reports, right? So these are subspecialty journals, right? So, like I said, think about who's the target audience and then try and, fit it all together. Ask your peers and colleagues, is it their number one choice for most of those, right? So, if you show your paper to a senior who is relatively well published, try to find which would be their number one journal of choice, because you might be new and haven't done this before, but then there are some people who have done it plenty of times, right? So they would give you a very large horizon and say, oh, you try Canadian Journal of Ophthalmology, or say try Middle East African Journal of Ophthalmology, or they may say try Asia Pacific Journal of Ophthalmology, and they may also come across with names which you haven't heard before at all, right? So that's a good idea to actually fall back on some helpful seniors. Then look at the scope of a journal, right? And it's important or vital to read author guidelines on the journal website. Trust me, the editors and the whole editorial team spend a lot of time coming up with these guidelines. And these guidelines are really based on not what the journal only wants, but also what the publisher wants and what are the workflows, and how much work will be needed in post production, right? So if say IGO wants articles, submissions with a particular type of referencing, right? So they want like square brackets and superscript, right? Now that is because the post production is set up that way. If everybody just puts their own way, the person who's creating those proofs has to sit and do those through and through for all papers, right? So imagine every paper having at least 15 or 20 citations, and if there are about 20 original articles, that person really has to sit and do those for at least 400 500 times. Now that is almost impossible to do, right? So that's just one example. So overall author guidelines are made with a lot of care, and you need to actually therefore follow those guidelines. Also look at the type of manuscripts which are accepted by that journal. Say like JCRS does not accept case reports, right? So you might have something which is very extraordinary in terms of post cataract complication or something like that, or a type of instrumentation which you have newly discovered, but then JCRS is not going to take that paper, right? So also similarly, JCRS is a cataract journal, but they take only clinical papers. Say if you have done a population based study which looked at the incidence of cataract and etc. It's a very large and well done study, but JCRS is not the right choice. That's because it does not accept these kind of studies which are population based, right? So they only want clinical material, right? So maybe BJO has one section like that, IOVS has another section like that for population based studies, right? So they may be better choices. Get familiar with different sections of the journal, right? So what are the different types of large sections that they have in terms of, first is original articles, then they have case reports or case series, then they have ophthalmic images and all of those other things, and then an editorial and all of those, right? So then understand what's going on. So frequently read and frequently downloaded articles, or the top 10 articles, are all generally available on good websites of journals, right? So if you look at the ophthalmology, the AAO journal website, you can easily find a tab which says top 10 articles, or it'll easily say, it'll easily give you a list of most downloaded articles over the last 1 year, right? So that means these are the topics which are hot, right? These are the topics which most people are wanting to read or most people are working on, right? So that also gives you a feel of where this journal is headed to. Also, who are the personnel on the editorial board, the editor, the section editor, etc. It also is good to have an idea of who these people are, especially if they're in your own domain, right? So somebody who's an oculoplasty surgeon or a cornea surgeon may actually send more, even subconsciously sometimes they may send more of these articles to peer review. If it's a cornea surgeon, then they may actually send some papers which are not right up there, but those papers may actually make it to peer review and acceptance as well. But then another paper, which is say a glaucoma paper, and even better, has been rejected right at baseline, right? Even without a peer review. And this can happen subconsciously. So, sometimes the editor specialty rubs off on the journal table of contents as well, right? So just, so these are, some pro tips, like I said. So it's not always going to happen, but look at the scope of the journal on the journal website. It's like I said, ophthalmology does not accept case reports now. They don't call it case reports. So they call it pictures and perspectives. Right? JCRS accepts only original articles and case series. No scope for epidemiologic surveys. IOVS has this section. I've already told you this. Right? Now look at also the acceptance rates. So when you look at the journal and about the journal info, or there will be a tab like about the journal or journal info, and it'll give you, say JAMA Ophthalmology says 29% out of 800 papers were accepted. Ophthalmology says 20%. Indian Journal of Ophthalmology says 6% or 10%, whatever that may be. Right. So acceptance rates depend on number of articles published in an issue and total number of articles submitted. Right. So if somebody is publishing a lot of articles and a lot of articles are also getting submitted, then that acceptance rate will be higher. But then if somebody is getting a lot of submissions but publishing fewer articles, then that acceptance rate is going to be lower, and therefore it's going to be more competitive, right? So this all helps you sort of narrow down on which of these 2-3 you might want to go. And what is the rapid review process, and is it rapid? Is the review process rapid or not? Right. So ideally, it should take about 6 weeks and not more than that for you to get a first correspondence from the editor saying that this is either rejected or requires revision and all of those. Right. So I mean, so how much time does it take? Most journals will also give this on their website, on the about journal info. So ophthalmology says actually 4 weeks. There are some journals which says 2 days, and that's almost impossible, right? So that's something wrong happening there. So so what is the actual turnover time and what you can accept? So that helps you prepare mentally as well, right? So if you don't want to take a look at the journal about information, you can actually look at the PDF or the full text if you can. And it says manuscript was received on this date and revision accepted on this date. This is another one where it says submitted in on February 16th and final revision on March 22nd, right? So it's about 6 weeks, like I said. Right, so these are all the questions that you need to ask when you are choosing a journal. Now, there's a lot of questions to be asked, right? So it's very difficult for us to keep all of these questions in mind, right? So just 1 second. So very important to also remember how good is your own paper. So introspect, don't aim too high, right? So what is the strength of your own study? Are the statistics and methodology sound? And have you actually written down well enough or not? And you will keep getting better at this, of course. And then also accept, or invite criticism from colleagues. It helps immensely before submissions and not after it. I get a lot of papers which the authors say, "Oh, this has been rejected, and this has been rejected again, and this has been rejected again. So please help me, improve it." But then already missed 3 opportunities, isn't it? So getting criticism before you submit is, I think, really key. And if you have good seniors and some colleagues around who will help you, that you can help them as well going forward, right? So it's important to do these things before you choose the journal. So remember that the journal that accepts your manuscript is the best journal for you. There's no question about this, right? So it doesn't matter if 2 or 3 top journals rejected the paper, but then the paper has finally found its house, right? So it's like everyone can't marry Aishwarya Rai, right? So, but then we are very happy with all our respective spouses, isn't it? Because we found home there. So a journal that accepts your manuscript is the best fit, really. So it's after many iterations, you'll realize that this is the most important part about choosing a journal, is to find the best fit, right? So you can actually I can show this again later on if you want. So the everything that I've said is there on a video which is hosted on YouTube, and you can actually take out your phones and you can scan this QR code, and then it will say go to, I'll also perhaps do it so that you don't have to remember this all the time. So when you scan this, it will say, or you can take a screenshot if you're listening on your phones, and later on you can do that. And so it says open in Chrome, and once it opens in Chrome, then you'll have to enter some of your own details, and then it'll take you to the lecture and some other things that we are going to discuss, right? So what if all of this can be done automatedly, where an AI at the back end is actually taking care of all of these questions for you and then recommending the best fit journal for you, isn't it? So that is actually now possible. So I'm going to skip, and I'm going to so this is like a it's like an infographic, it's like a cheat sheet. And once you scan that QR code, you will get this also along with, right? So this is like one A4 paper where you can actually get all of this information. So is it indexed, is the journal peer reviewed, and all of the information? Does the journal have an impact factor? Who's your target audience? Accepts manuscripts? Whatever we discussed now, right? And let me quickly show you about journal matchers. Right, so these are some of the journal matches which are there. Two most important that we'll also look at now is Web of Science Journal Finder and Elsevier Journal Finder. Right, so I'm going to click this. It's going to open up the website on Clarivate. This is the main website, right? So I'm already signed in, and this is a free sign in using Google or whatever, right? So I already have a manuscript, match manuscript. It says when you open it, asks for a title, and it asks for an abstract. So I've already kept something ready to show you. So this is a paper which was, it's already, of course, published. But so this is a comparative comparison of sutured versus sutureless krill fixated IOL, a retrospective analysis. I'm just going to copy, and I'm just going to say paste, and this has come here. And the abstract, again, you need to, of course, write it first, and then I'm just going to I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it here. It's all the abstract has been pasted and all the title has been pasted, and then say find journals. And so it's actually use score. The match score to journal is based on keywords which are present in your manuscript, right? So clinical ophthalmology is something that they are recommending as number one choice. If you see, this is called open access. So there is a cost to publishing this. You can, of course, you can view the profile page. Let's quickly go and say view profile page. So all about clinical ophthalmology is here, publisher and emerging source. Category ophthalmology, and it gives a lot of information about this. These are all other metrics indexed in PubMed. See, it's most important. If it's indexed in PubMed, that's pretty much how it is, right? So clinical ophthalmology. Then, oops, I think we'll have to do it all over again. Just 1 second. And the title. It's searching on its own at the back end, right? So then second is the Indian Journal of Ophthalmology, which is great. Again, it's open access, but we know that there is no publication charge to this, right? So it's great to see IJO as a second and equal match score, right? So if you have to pay versus you have to not pay, obviously it's a no-brainer, right? So perhaps IJO is the best journal of choice for this kind of paper, right? International Ophthalmology. Graphes Archives of Clinical and Experimental Ophthalmology, ACTA Ophthalmology, Journal of Ophthalmology, European Journal of Ophthalmology, International Journal of Ophthalmology, Retina, the Journal of Vitreous, and more and more. There are more. So there are 32 recommendations. Generally, we don't go beyond the first page.
Sunny, can you tell us where it shows that it's a paid journal or not?
Yeah. So then let me go back.
Sorry, I missed that.
No.
Anything that's open access would.
Yeah, once it's open access means there is likely to be some payment. So on the top right, if you see these, so clinical ophthalmology is open access. IGO is also open access. So this is very rare to find an open access journal which does not charge the author at all, right? So generally there will be an APC or an article processing charge, right? So once you click on this view profile page, it also gives how much they charge. This is based in Auckland, that is in New Zealand. Publisher's website, you can actually go to the website clearly and take a look at. So this is from Dove Press. I think most of you have heard about this journal, right? So so you can actually look at author information and
1.5 lakh per original article.
Yeah. So then I think here also they would give you some the charges. JCR subscription not active. Journal citation report. This is a new metric. Whatever. So this is APC is 2990 USD, right? So that's like $3,000. That's the open access fee for this paper, right? So when you actually go to the journal, you will find that there are some exemptions for some group of countries, and now India is not part of those exemptions though. So so this is an expensive journal, right? So but then sometimes we don't even know that journals exist, and there are people like in the Middle East and in Brazil and all who are very much willing to pay, but then they don't even know that these options exist, right? So that's why I thought I'll show you this. So this is Web of Science. Let me show you the Elsevier journal find. So Web of Science is a indexing body that is the Science Citation Index expanded, which actually gives the impact factor, right? And therefore it has journals from all over the place. So remember, Web of Science will have about 70, 80 ophthalmology journals, and most of them will be the top ones. Now, Elsevier Journal Finder will have a lot more journals, but the problem is they will only show you Elsevier, journals which are under the Elsevier publisher and not under many others, say like Wolters Kluwer. So IGO is under Wolters Kluwer. So this journal finder will not show you that, right? So again, you just basically have to match my abstract. So I'm just again going to copy that. Your abstract writing has to be pretty good, right? Otherwise, it's going to be quite difficult to match properly, right? So garbage in, garbage out. If you're entering good information, and we'll just say find journals. So this is American Journal of Ophthalmology. So it is open access also with particular fees, and then the subscription based also is there where there is no publishing charge. Ophthalmology Retina, it gives you impact factors and all of these things. Journal of Francaise, the ophthalmology. This is a French journal, right? So mostly it accepts your articles in French. Journal of APOS, Journal of AJO case reports, ophthalmology, Canadian journal. And I would not have really thought about the Canadian journal when I'm looking at a paper like this, but then perhaps it does. ocular surface, So as and when you keep going more and more down, this thing reduces. So journal finder will be all journals under the Elsevier publisher itself, right? So, and 8 or 9 will be ophthalmology. After that, it will all show you varied results, right? So also depends upon how well you have written the abstract, right? So it's very important to there are others. So Nature journal, Nature is a group, Springer Nature was a group which used to do this also, but now it is not available, right? So this is the link. So it says looking for a place to publish with over 3,000 journals, we cover a full range. Although we no longer suggest journals based on your manuscript that way, right? And this is something which also is coming up in a big way. This is American Journal Experts. So this is called a journalguide.com. It's going to be active perhaps in a month or so. And I've been involved with the AJE for almost a decade now, and been guiding and sort of consulting with them. So this is something that they are also doing, right? So journal guide will also be something similar, where you will enter your abstract and it will suggest possible journals, and it will be even wider in scope than Web of Science. If you see Web of Science, only 60-70 journals. If you see Elsevier, it will be only under the Elsevier umbrella. All the others will be excluded, right? So there is need for something which is better, and perhaps I think journal guide will be a really important one, which will help us choose journals properly, right? So last quick word is be careful of predatory journals. This is one of my blogs on predatory journals, and I've given points on, again, some 7-8 points on how you can weed them out. So what a predatory journal means is they're preying on your need to publish, and therefore they are going to charge you any fee, and they are going to publish your paper in 2-3 days. But then there is no peer review, there is no indexing, and it's all relatively crap, right? So it is better to not publish than to publish in a predatory journal, right? So these are all the questions again you need to ask. Is a journal an open access one? Are the editor-in-chief and editorial board credible and extensively published? Is the journal an official publication of a scientific organization? Is the journal peer-reviewed? Again, similar questions though. But then, a lot of people actually do fall into the trap of predatory journals. And also that's a bit of a gray zone where which journal you call predatory and which journal you don't call predatory, right? So I think these are some of the questions that you need to again ask in terms of whether you are falling into a trap where you are going to say pay $4,000 and then get your paper in print in 2 days, but then that's all going to go down the drain, right? And going to give you a bad name 3-4 years down the line, right? So it's important to weed out these predatory journals. So that was overall, what I wanted to actually share with all of you. I'm going to again put out this. If any of you have not scanned this, you can actually do. Right. So once you do this and enter information, you will not only get that lecture also, but you will also get these journal matchers, the same slide that I showed you in green background with those all those links are also there in that, so you can use them and see how they work in your hands. Remember that your abstract has to be good enough for them to match well. Right. So overall, this is what I thought I'll share with you in terms of choosing journals. So remember that this this is something that we don't pay a lot of attention to, but then down the line this is a very critical decision, and decides the make or break of your article. So thank you so much, and I'm happy to take questions if you have any.
Thank you, sir. I think that was a wonderful talk, and the information that you have given definitely shows the amount of experience and amount of time that you have put in publishing, and only then I think you can get all this information. So I think just 2-3 things that I just wanted to add upon. That there's one of this thing, Semiago Journal ranking, which also gives you a overview of all the journals that are enlisted. So if you want to look at all the journals that are published, that are there in ophthalmology, this is this website. If you can see on your screen, this is the site of Semiago Journal and Country Rank, wherein if you just put in your subject of ophthalmology, you can actually get a list of all the journals with their H index, and it gives you an overview. So there are 140 journals that are enlisted and in descending order of their, the publication rates and the H index. So that can also be a little helpful. And as sir has rightly said, you can go on to looking at your rate of acceptance rate of the articles for each of these journals, the frequency at which the journal is publishing, that is whether it's a monthly publication of publishing at a quarterly basis, that also gives you an idea of what are the chances of getting published with that journal? For example, IGO is publishing monthly. So the acceptance rate and publication chances are also better with IGO compared to some of the journals which are publishing at quarterly basis. And article processing fees, as Sir has rightly highlighted, is something you should look at the time of submission. Also, it is important to see, because everybody may not be getting grants for publication, and some of these journals have a very high article processing fees. So I think these are 2-3 important points that I just wanted to add on. But as an all, a wonderful talk, Dr. Sabyasachi, and you've wonderfully compiled all the points which are really important for the initial phase. Ma'am, Dr. Chetra,
I
would you
just
like
wanted
to
to
add?
add one point. Since you're talking to all the postgraduates here, I think the finances or the processing charges are going to be a big hurdle, because at least for us, we have some grants and aid. When they're postgraduates, rather difficult. So as both of them have already mentioned, APC and CPC are important. But the most important thing is also something called as open access charges. There are many journals which will charge you only if you want it open access. Of course, open access gives you a lot more visibility. People will read your article, cite it more. But in the initial stages, if you just want to publish because it helps, adding to your CV, it may not be a, very major article that you want as open access. If you click untick that open access button, you may not need to pay charges. So some journals have that. Another thing is some journals like BMJ, for example, you can take an institutional membership. In that, what happens, your processing charges are waived off. And that becomes very useful when you belong to a large institute. The costing is not much. It comes to around 30,000-40,000. And if you manage to, and that's an annual charge, you can publish about 10-15 articles, it's worth its, fee. So these are some things that you all can explore as well. And, as a society, it becomes difficult to provide these facilities because the corresponding author has to be the same person that when you buy the membership. So that may not work. As an institute or a large department, it's quite beneficial.
ना ठीक है देखिए
So moving on to we have our discussants. So Dr. Sharmishta, ma'am, would you like to add something?
I'll not add. If you allow me, I'll just repeat few points which he said, which Dr. Sabyasachi said. Like the most important thing which I felt is to become a reviewer. The more a person becomes a reviewer, the more you learn from that. And then he said very perfectly about to target the audience. Like who is going to read, and we try to choose a journal with a high impact factor, and look for repeated citations. That is also very important. The more we get rejected, we learn more about the submission of the articles. And then the download top 10 articles before writing. That's another important point which I would like to repeat. That's all.
Thank you. Rupat sir. Sir, are you there? Dr. Rupat?
Yeah, I'm there.
Yes, sir. Anything you would like to add on?
Yeah, I think it was an excellent talk as usual by Dr. Sabyasachi. We all know the amount of work he has done. He has been part of IGO editorial board and he has done stellar work. He has covered almost all the points. I just want to touch upon few points. That first is it is better to, for the beginners, it is better to avoid predatory journals, as Sunny has already pointed out, because predatory journals is not going to help anybody. Second is try to avoid journals we have APC charges, because that becomes non-viable for a student's point of view. And the most important thing is that whatever you do, the PGs nowadays are much smarter as compared to what we were. So the process of publication, they should start, and they can, the simplest way to start a publication is probably writing a letter to editor, which is very easy. It does not really need an original idea. You just have to read an article very carefully, analyze the article, and if you find any points which you can comment on, you just write a letter to editor and that gets accepted and you are into the PubMed. So this obviously gives you an understanding of the process, and you also learn how to write. So, and there are no publication charges. You don't have to decide a journal also. So the first thing is to habit of writing. So all of us can just start with simple letter to editors that will start the process of understanding and the habit of writing. And once a person sees his or her name is in PubMed, it obviously gives a kick, because whatever is said and done, whatever presentation you do in a conference, it has got a very fleeting effect. After the conference is over, everything is done and dusted. But if you are able to publish something in PubMed, your name is etched there forever. So it can give you a different feeling. Second is about publishing small reports like case reports. Before you start publishing, we all have to develop the habit of reading articles. Once you read a lot of articles, you get an understanding what people are publishing about and what is the lacuna that is present. Then only you can write an article. So there are n number of journals. It is not possible. Maybe it's a good idea just to read the Indian Journal of Ophthalmology. It's an excellent journal. It has now got a companion case report journal. So every month try to read the Indian Journal of Ophthalmology and the case reports, so you get an idea what people are publishing. And then you go back to the OPD and clinic and see your patient, and then you'll stimulate ideas. Okay, this is a patient that I can publish on. So I think these are the few points, but I think it's a habit, and it's a very tedious process. I mean, once a case report is accepted, it looks very nice, but there are so many rejections that goes into the process, so many cycles it goes through. So one should not get disheartened. Should keep trying it, and of course, if you have written it well, as Sunny said, the article will find its home. So I think it's just a habit that we have to inculcate, and it will give rich benefits.
Dr. Sabyasachi, I have one question. What is the highest number of rejections you have had for any of your articles?
So it was in the beginning phases where I have been rejected 14 times. And then, it's still actually made it into a PubMed index journal. So 14 is my highest number, but then 6 and 7 is pretty common, I think.
Yeah. So one of my mentors, I think Dr. Namrata, once told me that 17 was the highest number of rejection for one of the articles. So she said, you can't get sad by 2 or 3. 17 is my highest. Once you cross that, then you get sad. So rejection is not something that, should stop anybody from submitting in the subsequent journals. As I told you, there are 140 journals. So try. We definitely can get published.
I think it's important to also learn from those rejections.
Yeah,
in terms
rejections.
of have an open mind. And
how to improve.
Yeah, because a lot of the authors generally have a closed mentality, and it's your own baby, right? So you don't want to see the problems with your own paper. But then when you're showed the the mirror, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to digest. But then it improves slowly. So what I generally do is I read that and then I don't think about it. I go back to it after a week. And that's when I get clarity, So when you look at yourself inside a boiling water, you won't see a reflection. Only when everything is cooled down, you will see a reflection. So something like that. Sit on it.
You ask somebody else to read it, then also you get a better idea. To find flaws is easier in somebody else's work than your own.
That's right.
Apparently, the spouse is the best critic. So you should just give it to your spouse or sibling. They find and make it the best.
Maybe they are not of the same specialty.
But still, as more, if you're married to a physician, I think it's good enough. Somebody who's a doctor, I think, will work.
Let us take some feedback from the students who have attended. Dr. Hughes, would you like to say something?
Yes, actually, mostly all my queries are solved. The first one was how to avoid the predatory publishers. I recently got engaged with the one that says that I will publish in 3 to 4 days. So that query is solved now, and that the site Clarivate is a good site, I guess. I got to know now.
So I would say, beware of sweet emails soliciting.
Yes, Actually, they are
read
also.
paper and we are in love with your paper and why don't you submit
sir.
to our journal and we'll give you a discount and all of that.
Yes, yes.
Just be away from those. Once you publish 4-5 papers, you will see your spam box will be full of these. Right?
Yes,
So
sir. Actually, they are.
you and say, please submit to me, please submit to me. But then remember that all of these are almost very likely to be predatory.
You just ask them one question, what is the article processing fees? And then they become silent.
Yes, sir.
But many times they also show that impact factor is this much. How to test whether this impact factor is actual or fake?
You can check it online, sir, on the website. You can check on Google. You can just search these journals and you can find it out. And also, you
Sir,
can
I have one question.
you can type it on the PubMed itself. You can type the name of the journal and see if any articles are published in the name of that journal itself or not.
A whole lot of PGs are there. Can we take some questions from them directly by taking their names? Sir.
Anybody else? Dr. Sandeepana?
Dr. Sonali is there. Dr. Pankaj Shukla is there. Surbhi Prasad.
I have one more question, sir. So, how to know which is best for the case report? If there is anything to know about this.
Is it addressed to me?
Yes, sir.
So it is in today's world, it's less is more. So it's better not to write pages and pages of say 900,000 or 1,000 words or 1,200 words of case report. That's because all of these become citable items. So remember that these case reports and these fascinating images are what brings a lot of these the readership to the journal website. Right. So if ophthalmology doesn't publish fancy images or large collages and all of that, a lot of people will not find it interesting at all to go to the website. So what they do is they rename it, pictures and perspectives. And now the word limit is 100 words, and where you will be allowed only one image or a collage of 2 or something like that. Right. So now that is also going to be online only. It's not going to go in print. It is not a citable item, so it does not impact the journal's impact factor. However, it is a PubMed index publication, no question about it. Right? So JAMA Ophthalmology calls it photo essays. Ophthalmology calls it pictures and perspectives. And almost all of these top journals have these kind of types of articles, which are actually very, very abbreviated forms of case reports. Right? So I would really recommend against not writing a whole Mahabharat, but just pick out what is that one take-home message you want to convey, and then concentrate all your efforts around that one message. So that will really help.
Yeah.
Any other postgraduates should like to ask question? Are there any comments?
Sir, today is by going by the NMC, National Medical Council regulation, all the PGs, they have to do one presentation, either a presentation or poster presentation or an article in a journal.
Yes.
So by that standard, I think they should be asking more questions as to how to write and how to submit.
Okay.
Dr. Sonali is there, Dr. Surbhi is there.
Dr. Sabyasachi, I have a question for you. Would you recommend the postgraduates to follow Twitter for the journals like JAMA Ophthalmology, American Academy, AAO and all?
What I would really like the PGs to do is subscribe to the e-table of contents of these journals.
Okay.
And therefore, you get the whole table of content in your email box, and you're not only looking at the whole thing. You're looking at the whole thing and not very selected and curated. Now that is getting influential now, right? But then, I don't want to see what that person who's posting it wants to say. I want to see what the author actually wants to say.
Okay.
So then subscribe to the e-table of contents, and then you get the whole thing. And that's effort, right? Unless you put effort, it's not going to happen. So Twitter and LinkedIn and all it's all right to in the beginning, but then it's important to go the whole way. It also gives a lot of ideas, isn't it? When you look at all these topics, you say, "Oh, मैं तो ये भी कर सकता हूँ, या वो भी कर सकती हूँ," and then we can do large numbers also. So it gives you ideas also. So not just not just information.
Okay, thank you.
Sabyasachi, Dr. Sabyasachi, I have a question. What is the status of all the journals that are coming out from the state societies or the zonal societies? Where do they stand if they are not indexed?
So basically, all of these have to aspire to become indexed one day. So all the state societies need to have a professional publisher on board, and not just publish something random like a PDF, and it's all going to go to waste, right? So you need to have a publisher with you, and then there are charges going to be for that. So that is one. Second thing is you need to have an eye on what are the requirements for PubMed indexing, and you need to work towards that. So that takes at least 3 to 4 years. But then it's important to have that eye on it. So when you look at some of the some of the journals, they have been being published with, say, Journal of Web for the last 6 years, 7 years, 9 years, but then they don't seem to have any indexing at all, right? So far. So that I am not involved really in micromanaging any of these journals, but then I feel it's already long-term view that the existing editors or the incoming editors work on these and get them indexed.
Still a tough job.
It's a very tough job because unless you don't have an indexed journal, people do not submit. Basically, that is one of the
That's
toughest
the whole problem.
Yeah,
You don't
to
get good
them to
articles for the
submit
state journal.
to a non-indexed journal, even if they are associated with like scientific scholar or whatever it be. So that becomes a difficult task.
That's right. That's right.
Dr. Santosh, now it's your turn.
Thank you.
Okay, summarize, give a concluding remark.
I think very elaborately, Dr. Sabyasachi has explained everything. The key word from the whole presentation, I think, is to find the best fit. One have to find the best fit journal for your article. And to find the best fit, there are different mechanisms as he has described. And one need to follow all those things. First slide, he has shown all the points. I think people should have clicked pictures of those presentations.
Yeah.
Very, very informative. And even me, at this point of time, I'm facing a period now of rejections, which we have discussed. So nobody should be discouraged of rejections. As our moderator was telling about 70 rejection, Dr. Narmata Sharma also had. So nobody should be discouraged of rejection. Point number 2. And definitely point number 3, Dr. Rupak has already told that if nothing is there, just write a letter to the editor. So these points need to be very well taken by all our postgraduates and all the ophthalmologists who are participating in this discussion. And I think we also should look forward. The proposal Dr. Chaitra has given, like to make it a module course with certification. That is our goal for our group. And definitely we all can find a suitable journal for our articles with all the inputs from our speakers and moderators and the panelists. So thank you very much. We can close the session with thanks to the sponsor. Bye.
Thank you all. Thank you, Sunny. Give me the very useful tips.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Pranita.
you,
The recorded version will be put up in the YouTube as well as it will be circulated in all the groups also.
Thank you all for the wonderful
So those who have missed, they can watch it later on also.
Thank you, Rahul.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you.
You can close down. Good night. Good night, everybody.
Dr. Sabyasachi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, Sunny.
Good night.
Bye, sir. Bye, sir. Bye, all of you. Bye, Sumista.
Good night, sir.
Good night. Good night.
Bye-bye.